One day a few years ago, as I was driving down the freeway in the early evening hours, I was treated to a magnificent spectacle in the sky, an unusually large and luminous full moon. It happened to be a blue moon. A blue moon is when two full moons occur in one calendar month. That doesn't happen very often, and that is why we have the saying, once in a blue moon. I love the heavenly bodies, and I particularly love the moon in all its phases. I love to meditate upon the moon when I see it in all its glory. My thoughts then went back to a certain man by the name of Neil Armstrong, who was buried on that same day, the day of the blue moon. Neil Armstrong was the first earthling to step foot onto the moon. Many of us will remember that day, July 20th, 1969, when we finally landed on the moon. When Neil Armstrong set his left boot into the lunar surface, he said words which have become immortal. That's one step for a man, but a giant leap for mankind. It was. That was a very small step for a human being to take. But for the human species, that was an enormous leap forward to walk on the surface of the moon. How appropriate that he was laid to rest on the day of the blue moon. As I meditated further, the remarkable words of St. James from our second reading today entered my mind. All good giving and every perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of lights. I imagined that as St. James wrote those words, he must have been looking at the same heavenly lights that I was looking at right then. Perhaps he was staring then into the full splendor of a blue moon, and he was moved to write thus about the Father of lights and all good giving coming from that Father of lights. The moon is a wonderful model of giving. The moon has no light of its own. The moon gives, reflects the sun's light. The moon is the perfect giver. Many years ago I heard an anecdote. It was a true story, but I'm sorry I cannot remember the name of the gentleman it was told about. But he was a famous, rich man, and one day he was walking down the street and was accosted by a beggar who asked for some money. Now this beggar was known to be a good-for-nothing, and it was well known that anything he received would be wasted. Despite that, the rich man pulled out his wallet and gave him a very generous gift. The rich man's friends were appalled and told him that this man was not worthy of a gift. The man said, "I did not give it to a man. I gave it to mankind." A small step for a man, but a huge step for humanity. It is in our human nature to give, just as it is in the nature of the moon to give further the light of the sun which was reflected off the moon. We cannot get away from giving. It is built right into ourselves. The Indian philosopher Rabindranath Tagore once wrote, "Life is given to us, and we earn it by giving it." We cannot escape giving, just as the moon cannot escape reflecting the light which comes from the sun. There are so many people right here today who spend their lives giving in so many different ways, giving of their time, giving of their talent, giving of their treasures, giving of their love, giving of their life. That is our nature. In our own day, however, there has arisen a philosophical movement based on selfishness based around not giving, a philosophy which makes selfishness into a virtue. The tenets of this philosophy are sink or swim, survival of the fittest, every man for himself, every woman for herself. This is diametrically opposed to Catholic social teaching and has been consistently condemned. It is opposed to the most fundamental principles of all faiths, but more than that, it is a gross distortion of the nature of humanity. There are even people who embrace this philosophy and consider themselves believers. Yet this philosophy was invented by a self-proclaimed atheist, and she quite frankly acknowledged that denying the existence of God is a crucial element of this philosophy. Indeed, we see this to be true. If the light of the moon truly belongs to the moon and is of the moon, then I suppose the moon has the perfect right to try to keep all that light to herself. But if we acknowledge the existence of the greater light, the sun, of which the moon's light is a mere reflection, then it is absurd for the moon to attempt to keep all that light to herself. Our human nature is a giving one, just as the nature of the moon is a giving one. There are people who don't want to give, thinking that they will make themselves poor by giving too much. But Anne Frank wrote so wonderfully in her diary, "No one has ever become poor by giving." The moon is the perfect giver. None of her light is of herself, none of it her own. But as soon as she receives the light, she gives it further. And it is only in her giving, her reflecting, that we are able to see the moon in all her radiant splendor. It is only when she gives the light that light is truly hers. We too have nothing of our own. Everything we have is given to us by God to be passed on further. Our wealth, our talent, our love, our life has value only in the giving. As the great French author André Gide has so astutely written, complete possession is proved only by giving. All that we are unable to give possesses us. And so let us not allow ourselves to be possessed by that which we think we own, but rather let us become perfect moons to the light of God, giving, reflecting, spreading that light, and so come to live as true children of the Father of light.